everyone, and welcome to the Valentin Consulting Guest Speaker Series. I am Dr. Daisy Valentin, the CEO of Valentin Consulting, and I am so thrilled to have everyone here watching this dynamic YouTube channel where we are hosting so many wonderful, amazing guest speakers. And we are so excited to have a wonderful guest speaker here today as well. And what is our guest speaker series? Well, it's the purpose of collaborating with thought leaders and industry experts, giving them a platform to share their knowledge, their expertise, their passion for specific things that they do, and engaging them in community. So we have a wonderful guest speaker today. I'm so excited to have you. Karen Knab is here today with me. And we are so excited to hear about you, who you are, what you do. So take it away, Karen.
Thank you, Dr. Daisy. It's really great to be here. So I am a trusted advisor for executives and business owners, and I help them to develop all sorts of leadership skills. But most importantly, I focus a lot on conflict resolution and navigating organizational politics. And it probably won't be a surprise to learn that my background is in psychology. I'm actually a licensed marriage and family therapist. And with that focus, I have been able to work with a lot of spouses, many families over the years, and helping them navigate conflict. So I've been doing that for 18 years. And about 3 years ago, I started working with organizations and helping their leaders. So my goal in organizations is to help them bring harmony to their organization, bring harmony to their leadership team, bring harmony to their business partnerships. And, I was thinking about, where did I really start? I mean, I didn't just start 18 years ago. Why am I even interested in this? And I would have to say it has to go because I grew up in the 80s as a Gen Xer. I had 3 siblings and we had to share everything, right? I mean, we had to share bedroom, we had to share the television, we had to share the phone and the radio stations, right? So we were constantly navigating conflict, right? Like we were constantly trying to figure out what show we were going to watch, what song, what station we were going to play on the radio.
Not to date myself, but I was in that era.
Right? Right. So I think, that just became sort of, I really valued that. And I think, some folks got that and it became really easy for them to navigate conflict and other folks didn't. And it seems really overwhelming. And so I found that particular niche to be very valuable. I had a lot of practice growing up, and now I get to bring that to the folks that I work with in different capacities.
It's so amazing that you say that, because your expertise prior to like growing up, right? And then your background with the therapy and so forth, bringing it into this, people don't realize how much is needed, right? Like you were saying, back in the 80s, like we had to fight for the rotary phone. I'm like thinking rotary phone, dating myself here. We don't know what was the cell phone and all this stuff. Like I just got experienced, closer to the end of the 80s, 90s and stuff like that. So a lot of times we don't even see that. But I want to ask you, when you're trying to see, like in your experience, how does that workplace culture impact the way conflicts arise and are handled within family-owned businesses? Because like you mentioned, you were saying families, and most of the time, yet big corporations, but sometimes these big corporations are family-owned businesses, right? So how does that come into play?
Sure. Well, I just want to kind of back up a little bit, and I always like to start with reminding people that conflict isn't actually the problem. Mm-hmm. It's how we have learned or not learned how to manage it. And that usually comes from what we saw growing up, quite honestly. Mm-hmm. So conflict is really just a different set of, it's our different perceptions or different opinions, different histories that we bring into a situation. I always like to say the example of like the holidays, Christmas, etc. Some people have a really great experience at the holidays and had really great traditions and they really enjoyed it. Other people, maybe didn't for different reasons. Maybe they've lost people over the years and the holidays become a real trying time. So the holidays are the same, but it's what people bring to that experience that makes them have whatever opinion they have about it. So that's not really a conflict. It's just that people have different experiences they're bringing to the table. And that's most often what's happening with typical conflicts. And so if you grew up in a family that had an easy time managing conflict or gave lots of great modeling around it, you probably don't have much of a struggle. But if you grew up in a family where conflicts, escalated, people started yelling, maybe somebody left, slammed the door, had to drive away, take a break, or they just got, kind of pushed under the rug. You learned that, hey, we don't really bring that stuff up in our families. So,
Or you got that annoying aunt or uncle you just don't want to be around.
for any business, like we're all bringing that to our workplace, right? So sometimes,
Mhm.
so family businesses are no different in that some might have had really great modeling for conflict and some might not have. And that's definitely going to affect how people behave and manage conflict in a professional environment, not just a personal environment.
So, you know, and then this is a little switch because, like you said, it depends on how they were brought up, what's that
Mhm.
culture they came in, and how they bring it into their leadership. I call it leadership as well. How can teams foster an environment that helps them see where the conflicts are
Mhm.
and as opportunities for growth come up, right? Because
Mhm.
there's going to be opportunities for growth rather than obstacles, right? And so how
Mhm.
do they kind of like take that, like what is your experience when you're, something brief, it doesn't have to be, something too drastic like or anything like that, but just
Mhm.
how does that help the teams foster that environment to, like you said, it's not just conflict, it's everything that people bring, because our what we experience, we bring it into our businesses, right? We bring it into the culture of our business. So how does that help them? How do we foster an environment that, like you said, will bring that conflict to help them overcome obstacles or have growth opportunities? Where does
Yeah.
that come into play?
Yep. So I can talk about 5 tips just to kind of lay some groundwork here. 5 tips
Hmm.
to address conflict in the workplace. And I'll say that most times where people start off is they don't really want to rock the boat, right? They have good intentions, they're upset about something, but they don't want to rock the boat. And so they end up keeping things to themselves. They don't bring things up. So we would call that more of a passive communicator, right? They're just sort of
Hmm.
like laying low, but there's things that are bothering them. And that can work in the short term. Um, Certainly, they can get away with that. But over the long term, what happens to people is that they start to feel more and more disconnected from their peers. They start to maybe have some more and more resentments towards folks, and they don't feel seen because they're not actually speaking up. And it can actually lead to lower self esteem as well, because if you're not speaking up for yourself or standing up for yourself, that really can start to erode your self esteem over time. So I'm not just saying one time, I'm
Hmm.
saying like repeatedly keeping things to yourself and not managing. So, if that's the case, there's 5 things you can do about that. One thing is to be assertive and speak up. The first thing is that you need to be in sort of the right headspace to be able to do that. There's 2 parts of the brain. This is where my psychology comes into play, where the back part of the brain is our emotional brain. The front part of the brain is more of our thinking brain. It's more rational. But when we're too emotional, our rational brain stops working just for a little while. And so if we are in the right headspace, it means we've calmed down. We're not super frustrated. We're not super worried. We're not really emotional. We're a little bit calmer. We've taken some time, and that's automatically going to put us in a better place to bring something up to whoever we need to bring it up to. The second thing that I would say is, if possible, try to bring things up in between conflicts. So something might have
Mm.
happened, you don't want to address it immediately because everybody's a little bit too upset about that at that point. So you
Hmm.
want to sort of wait. You don't want to wait till it happens again, but you want to wait to somewhere in the middle, because that's going to allow you to calm down as well. The other person's going to be able to be calmer, and you can bring it up in a less threatening way, and they won't get as defensive. So say they're late for work, you're going to maybe, they're late for work one day, They're not late for work the next day. Maybe they're going to be late for work the next day. So you want to address it in the middle, in between those two situations, so that you have the best chance of having a positive conversation. If you do need, the third tip is, if you are in the middle of a conflict and you have no choice but to deal with it right then, take some deep breaths. And if you can, just try and buy yourself a little bit of time. Can you just take a bathroom break? Can you just,
5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Yep, 5 minutes. Just so you can give yourself a little bit of time. So that's also extremely helpful when you need it. 4 is making sure you're using I statements, using statements that reflect how you're feeling and not blaming the other person. So instead of saying like, you never listen to me, or you always give her the better, you let her lead the meeting. You want to talk about yourself. It really makes me feel undervalued when you don't allow me to lead the meetings, even though I'm just as qualified. It just sounds a little bit different. And the other person isn't going to be as defensive, right? And they'll be able to hear what you're saying. And in that same vein, really, we want people, number 5 is, we want to be actively listening. We want people to listen to us, but we also need to be listening to them to understand where there was a disconnect. Because most conflicts, in my experience, come from some sort of miscommunication, misunderstanding, misrepresentation. Like it's just kind of a miss at some point.
It's a miss in somewhere.
Yep. And then it becomes bigger if it's not addressed sooner. But if it's addressed right away, to your point about team culture can address conflicts and move on quickly. Good, positive, healthy team culture. Less healthy team culture will let conflicts kind of stew. And then things start to become a little bit more toxic or negative. People start to be more passive aggressive and gossipy, talking behind people's backs because they don't feel like they can talk to people directly. So,
yeah. So you answered one of my questions that I have for you, because I was like, oh, she just answered that question, which is really good. Like, really good. You just gave it to us, like the 5 points. I love it. Write those down. Whoever's watching, you better write them down. You can always go back and watch this. No problem. Now, one of the questions I have for you, and I know I hadn't sent this to you, but I have a question about this, and you may or may not know. How can crowdsourcing, I don't know if you've heard that word before, but how can crowdsourcing be used to ensure that conflict resolution processes are fair and inclusive, especially in situations where there are power imbalances among parties involved?
Sure. So I would say the word I would use would be more like collaboration, but I think you're saying the same thing, crowdsourcing, collaboration. So that's actually a best practice in some regards, in that if you're a leader and you have a team and you're trying to create, say, a new process for something, right? Collaboration would be, I'm going to ask every person on my team to come to me and say, if it was just up to me, here's what I would recommend to change this process. And you'd have maybe 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 different answers. But because people are kind of independently being asked to come up with their best ideas, everyone's going to be heard. And it gives everyone a chance to offer their best ideas. And then within that, maybe you have some overlapping ideas. Maybe you have 2 or 3 people with the same ideas. And from there, you can start to build out, hey, this is the direction we think we should go based on the team. But making sure that everyone is heard alleviates a lot of that sort of resentment that can happen if someone's not being asked about their opinion. And if that happens, then they might go behind the scenes and start gossiping a little bit and expressing their discontent. But once everybody's included, maybe their idea isn't the one that's picked, or maybe parts of it are picked. But overall, when people are heard, they absolutely feel more included, and it's easier for the whole team to move forward in the same direction, even though not everyone's going to get their idea taken into account. So
into account, but they're being heard, right? They're being heard, or like you said, even if they're saying it in a different way, this is a good way for managers and leaders to play a role in preventing conflict, right? Because they're
100%.
asking their team in a collaborative effort, like you said, like be fair and inclusive and have all these things. And like you mentioned, it could be an overlap where, I find crowdsourcing to be also a way where you can make a collaboration in from different departments, right? Getting someone from different departments that can work together as a team, even though they don't think that, even though they're in different departments, they don't think that their teams come together. You see what I mean?
Mm.
Like a lot of times when I being in the accounting field, right? Accounting is messed up. It's in everything. Okay, we're messed up. We taste everything. We have a little here, little there, like we taste it all, right? So, but a lot of different departments don't realize that if this department doesn't do what they're doing, it affects the other one. And it affects the other one, it affects the other one, kind of like it with accounting, it rolls all of them, right? But I feel like what you mentioned helps really bring that conflict interest resolution a little bit better because they're getting heard and they're bringing collaboratives. And like you said, if this person is bringing this idea and this person is bringing this idea and they're from two different departments, and now you can say, hey, I can put these two different departments together and they can work on that,
Mm-hmm.
right? They can
Mm-hmm.
work on that. So
Yes. And so people think that that's the trouble there is that it takes longer to
mm-hmm,
do it the way we're talking about
mm-hmm,
than to have one person come in and say, this is my decision and this is how we're going to do it. I
mm-hmm.
mean, you could certainly have a leader come in and do that, right?
Yes. And there's a
And
lot of them that do that. But
100%,
then
right?
now that's where the gossip comes in. Oh, here we
Yes.
go. Our jobs are going to be blah, 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 blah.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But it might take a little longer, but it's going to be more efficient in the long run. Don't you
Right.
think?
Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of it is that if you can recognize to take that extra time up front, you'll have far less problems moving forward versus the opposite where it's shorter time up front, but then you have, weeks and potentially months of discord that you're
It,
trying to manage after the fact because people weren't heard, right?
yeah. And then the other thing I wanted to ask is like, this is kind of one communication technique, right? That helps people de escalate tension situations or misunderstandings at work. What other situations have you seen, other than what I've referenced here really quickly, where you said it could take a little longer, but it will help in the long run for their business. But what other techniques can be used that may not be so lengthy, but
Mm-hmm.
still be effective?
Right. So there's two other ways that I would recommend, two techniques that you could start out with. One is called the third option, where
Mm-hmm.
if you have two people and they both want different things,
Mm-hmm.
and they typically are in a power struggle, it's like, well, it's either they get what they want or they get what they want. How about a third option? What's a way that we could both conceivably get part of what we want? Maybe we won't get all of what we want, but we can both get part of what we want versus the power struggle of either I get it this time and you get it next time, and we're always pulling each
Mm-hmm.
other. So that's one idea. The other one to get people to try new things when they're hesitant is to put a time limit on the new process. So say you have some,
Mm-hmm.
finance folks or accounting folks can be very risk averse, right?
Mm-hmm.
You have the best interest of the company in mind. You don't want them to get into any sort of trouble financially.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes there'll be people that are like, I don't want to change this. We're not going to change this. The way to help people manage that is to say, you know what, let's just try this for a month,
Mm-hmm.
or let's just try this new process for a quarter, and then we'll come
Mm-hmm.
back to it and we'll reevaluate, right? Because that allows people to say, you know what, I don't have to fully commit. I don't have to fully
Exactly.
agree, but sure, I'm willing to try anything for a month. Nothing bad can happen in a month. If it does, we'll fix it, we'll self-correct. And it allows them to take that smaller risk versus like, oh my gosh, I have to say yes, and it's I have to say yes for the rest
It's
of
stuck there. It's stuck there for the
right,
rest. Exactly. I do that with
right.
my clients. I that's a really good process because I really do that with my clients. Like I tell them, we give you a 6 months period, right?
Mm-hmm.
We evaluate every 6 months just to see how well your business is doing, what's doing, so we can coach you, and every business has that. Like every business has an opportunity to show that time limit new process. And that's really nice that you have those you know, different strategies to help clients understand how the conflict resolution can happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, how can workplace conflict contribute to positive change if addressed constructively?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know there's going to be some conflict, and nothing's perfect, we got to admit that. And like you said, there's not just two ways to do everything. But how can workplace conflict contribute to positive change? And if so, how can it be addressed constructively?
Oh my gosh. I love that question so much. And it really, I want people to think about conflict as it can be a positive tool. And
Mm-hmm.
my career, I've spent many, many hours refereeing conversations. That's been I facilitate, referee, whether it's 2 people, 3 people, a group of people. That's my role. And I help people express themselves around a particular issue. And I want to hear from everybody. And my
Mm-hmm.
goal isn't to be biased or to take anybody's side. My role is to help everyone else understand each person's perspective. Because when we do that and we're curious about, where people are coming from,
Mm-hmm.
we often realize that, first of all, some of the conflicts are misguided in the first place. They really don't need to be conflicts. We just didn't understand where
Absolutely.
people were coming from. But second of all, we also might realize that we didn't think of all the different things we needed to think about. Maybe there's some things that we missed. Maybe there's some data that we weren't considering. And so hearing from everyone else and expressing their input about a particular issue, maybe that we initially disagreed with them, we might actually end up making a better decision because we're hearing from all sides of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the best decision for the company or the organization can be made when everybody's heard. So I feel I've seen that happen countless times where people change their minds because they're willing to listen to other people. And I certainly help with that by corralling.
You're the mediator. She's the
Yeah.
mediator.
Corralling the
Just think about her
conversation.
as the mediator before you go to the judge.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm way cheaper than
And then
hiring
the
a
judge,
lawyer.
right? Than the lawyer and all that. Exactly.
Yes.
That is amazing that you say that, because that does happen in family-owned businesses. I see it a lot in partnerships and family-owned businesses, because so wants to do it this way, but so wants to do it that way, but so doesn't understand that if we do it this way, they're not listening to each other, so they're not coming to a common ground, right?
Mhm.
And yeah, there's conflict resolutions in bigger organizations, right? But in bigger organizations, you have like a board, right? A sounding board. And the sounding board, like you mentioned, brings everything in. So you have to kind of like be that mediator for um that family or partnership business, to say, hey, you are your own board, and you have to hear your sounding board to know where you want to go. Many businesses I see that don't strive is because they don't have someone like you, Karen. Like, they don't have someone like you that comes in and shows them that conflict resolution process, to be heard, to be seen as a board, because they never had to done it before, right? And then they wait till the last minute, and I'm going to throw a little like commercial for you here. They wait till the last minute to implement something like this, when if they nip it in the right away, I'm not going to say the word because it's not good to have that on live TV if we say it. You nip it right away, right? You save yourself not only time, but a lot of money and resources, right? By doing that. So if you have a business and Karen can help you with that, we're going to be providing her information in the comments. We're almost out of time,
Oh my
but
gosh.
before we leave, I want you to leave something that is really valuable, a statement that will be taken away, that resonates like with you, what you've done, gives something that really shows that passion, and a statement that you've left before to anyone that you've worked with, to show that this is something that people need, no matter how small, how large your organization is, especially if you are in those type of conflict resolution situations. So can you give us something like that?
Absolutely. My quote that comes to mind right now is, you can't read the label from inside the jar.
Mm,
And you can only do so much on your own to understand yourself and how you come across. You can read books, you can listen to podcasts or watch TikTok videos. I mean, you can certainly do a lot to build your self-awareness, but at the end of the day, taking that next level, that next step has to do with how you come across interpersonally. And that requires you to get feedback from people around you. And let me tell you, that is very intimidating for people to ask for that feedback, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so to set yourself up for success, working with somebody like me, who's my only goal is to help you be better and to grow and to
Mm-hmm.
understand how you come across so that you can come across the best way that you want to, and not in a way that is misinterpreted or it's perceived in a different way. So working with someone like me or another advisor is a way to get that feedback in a much shorter amount of time. I mean, people could realize the things that I share with them. It might take them 10 years, honestly, to
Mm-hmm.
realize some of the things on their own. And that's true for so many advisors. We should turn to an advisor whenever there's a question of like, I don't really know how to do that, or I don't really know how to figure that out. Find the right person who can help you with that and save
Mm-hmm.
yourself years of time,
Years of
right?
time,
I mean,
money,
especially
resources.
as entrepreneurs, we should be finding other people who can help us get to where we need to go. We can't be an expert in every part of our business. And this is no different. Our interpersonal skills, our leadership presence, our conflict
Definitely.
resolution skills, those are all working for us or against us in our business, whether we want to believe it or not. And so if you feel like this is an area that you have never gotten feedback on, and or you may have gotten some feedback that wasn't great, do yourself a favor and find somebody who can help you with this ASAP, because it's worth it and your company will grow so much faster when you understand how you're coming across in all areas of your business.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And let's leave it where she mentioned, I want to say it again. You can't read the label from inside the jar. I really like that. I really like that. People think about that. And it's so important for that because no, we never know what we don't know, right? And sometimes we need to just bring it in. So thank you so much for being here, Karen. And thank you everyone for watching our guest speaker series. We are so excited. If you continue to want to know more about the upcoming guest speaker series or any guest speakers, please like and subscribe so you can get notifications every time we have a new guest speaker here. But don't forget, you can always go back. You can always watch all our different guest speaker series that we have had. So keep in mind that we are here to support you and our community. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye bye.